Are we ready? Okay. The time is 7 p.m. I call the regular meeting of the Delaware City Planning Commission to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mansoras?
Here.
Mr. Prawl?
Here.
Ms. Tuckerbuck?
Here.
Mr. Halter?
Here.
Vice Chairman Simpson?
Here.
Chairwoman Keller?
Here. Moving on to item 2, would the clerk please read this into the record?
Approval of the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on December 2nd, 2015, as recorded and transcribed.
What is the wish of the commission on this item?
Make a motion we approve the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on December 2nd, 2015, as recorded and transcribed.
Motion by Mr. Halter. Second. Second by Ms. Tuckerbuck. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mansoras?
Yes.
Mr. Prawl?
Abstain.
Ms. Tuckerbuck?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Keller?
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 3 of regular business. Would the clerk please read item A, numbers 1 and 2 into the record?
Item A, Glen Ross North Subdivision. Item 1, 2015-2558, a request by Romanelli Homes for approval of a final development plan for Glen Ross North, Section 1, consisting of 69 single-family lots on 34.187 acres zoned R2, PMU, one family residential district with a planned mixed-use overlay district, located on the east side of Glen Road and just north of the Glen Ross Golf Club. Item 2, 2015-2559, a request by Romanelli Homes for approval of a final subdivision plat for Glen Ross North Section 1, consisting of 69 single-family lots on 34.187 acres zoned R2 PMU, one family residential district with a planned mixed-use overlay district, located on the east side of Glen Road and just north of the Glen Ross Golf Club.
Okay, who's the presenter?
I am.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, the subject site located east of Glen Road, just west of the railroad tracks and north of the Glen Ross Golf Club. It's zoned R2 PMU. It's a fairly flat site. Back in July of last year, the 100-acre parcel was annexed last February, and last July zoned to R2. The subject site has, the entire development has about 196 homes on the 100 acres for about a density of just under 2 units per acre, and about 22% of the site has open space. Tonight, the applicant is requesting to develop Section 1, which would be 69 single-family lots located in the lower left portion, southwestern portion of the site, which is in yellow on the exhibit in front of you. The engineering department is reviewing the plan as we speak. Access from the site would be from the roundabout on Glen Parkway. The site would extend west into the Glen Ross subdivision and south into the Glen Ross subdivision. So there'd be 2 connection points. Glen Road would be extended just past phase or section 1, and they would give us easements to their property line for the subject site. The layout itself is located just south of the main open space, which is in phase 2, which is the Radial Park, Central Park area. Of the 69 single-family lots, 42 of them would be 80-foot lots, and 27 lots would be 70-foot lots. In addition, adjacent to the Glen Ross subdivision to the south and east, the lots abutting those would be 80-foot lots to be consistent with what's in the existing lots in Glen Ross subdivision today. The single-story ranch house would have a minimum 1,800 square feet square footage, and the two-family house or the two-story house would have 2,000 square foot minimum, with 200 square feet per additional bedroom in excess of 2 bedrooms. Consistent with the Glen Ross subdivision, the design standards for the Glen Ross North would be similar. It'd require 100% natural material on all elevations. All houses would have a 2-car minimum garage. All houses shall have dimensional shingles. As I mentioned earlier, about 22% of the entire development is open space. In this development, in section 1, there's open space just south of the entrance, about 1.5 acre park, and it will be consolidated with the existing park in Glen Ross subdivision, which is a city park. Just north of the entrance is about 5 acres of open space, which would extend into more open area, which is in section 2. I'm saying that's more passive open space. The landscaping plan would have the usual street trees, perimeter landscaping, and mounding along Glen Road. Along Glen Road, between Glen Road and the rear of the lots and the detention pond is about a 3-foot high mound with landscaping to buffer views into Glen Road. All the landscaping plans would have to be reviewed and approved by the Shade Tree Commission. A bike path would be located along the eastern portion of Glen Road to match what's out there today and extend the length of this section, and in section 2 would extend to the northern property line. The sidewalks would also be located on all streets to connect ultimately to the bike path and to the Central Park, which is in phase 2, when the Central Park would be programmed and constructed. Tree preservation, there are trees along the southern property line and the eastern property line adjacent to the Glen Ross lots that would be preserved, the single-family lots. A lighting plan would need to be reviewed and approved by the chief building official. Staff recommends approval of the final development plan with 3 conditions and the final subdivision plat with 11 conditions. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
That 1.5 acre park, is that actually going to be deeded into the city, or is that just going to be, you said it's consolidated? Who's gonna have
Well,
responsibility?
both will be consolidated and deeded. Yes.
And do you have the percent, like the compliance for this on these sections where we're talking about the front exteriors? There's different sections within the Glen Ross as far as do you know what percent?
This would be
that
100% consistent with
okay.
Glen Ross. The communities of Glen Ross, which is
Yes.
the other section of Glen Ross, if you will, that's 40%.
Okay.
And that's just up the front elevation where this would be.
Okay. And then currently within the Glen Ross area, you're starting to see the way signs as far as direction, Highlands this way, communities this way, golf course this way. Will we see that as well? Or have we talked about that once the development hits different phases?
You're saying from this development to have directions into the Glen Ross development?
Yes, or vice versa, from the Glen Ross into this north division.
I think nothing in this application precludes that. We obviously talked about that at preliminary, as you know, and at annexation and zoning. And we've talked about that with the applicant, and we continue to talk to them about that. I think it might be a little odd at some of the internal road connection points, but you could find a way to be able to do that that doesn't proliferate a bunch of signs out there, but also just facilitates wayfinding. So we can. There's no requirement for them to do that. As you know, those signs were added really long after Glen Ross had started developing and communities of Glen Ross. So there's nothing here that would preclude that from happening.
Okay. And my last question is, when you're looking at the larger sheet, it uses Balmoral Drive from the Glen Ross into this as the name of the street. Is that actually going to be Balmoral, or is that going to be Nellick Drive? That comes all the way over to the ending point or the beginning point of the Glen Ross section. You know what I mean?
In talking with safety forces and engineering, the idea was to break the road name there at Sycamore Lane, which if you, I think some of your material shows you the larger subdivision becomes a fairly major road, and so that was a logical dividing point so that we don't have we're going to have loop roads in here anyway, so we have to decide where to change these names in a logical way for our safety forces and the countywide 911 and all that kind of good stuff. And that's where it was determined to be more logical.
Okay. Is that because of the access off of Glen Parkway?
Yeah, you got Sycamore coming, and then Sycamore continues on.
Right.
So as more of I don't know, a primary road in the subdivision, probably slightly more primary than Balmoral and Mellick in this case, but that was, and as you look at where Mellick Drive and a loop would have resulted if you hadn't done it there, I think that was more of the concern. Lance or Jen, do you recall? I think that's
I think
the
that was
discussion.
the discussion was that entering in from, that was a logical break point. Yep. That makes sense.
Anyone else? Ready for the applicant? Is the applicant here? Hello.
Hi.
Just need your name and address for the clerk, please.
Brian Prenger, last name Prenger. Address is 5500 New Albany Road, Columbus, Ohio.
Do you have anything to add to staff's presentation on this?
No.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Just should everything be approved, do you have a time frame when you would start digging and starting on this phase?
The developer would like to start this summer if possible. I know the plan approval, of course, comes first, but yeah, as soon as possible, they would like to start.
Do you know what the price point of the homes will be?
No, I don't.
I'm assuming it would be similar to the rest of the community since the design standards are fairly consistent.
Again, I think at the time of zoning and annexation, Mr. Romanelli or Mr. Fisher indicated that they were targeting, again, at that time, somewhere in the $300,000, $350,000 range, subject to market conditions, of course, and who would be the end builder. They may not end up being the end builder.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? If so, just raise your hand. If not, okay. I will turn it over to the commission.
I'll make a motion to approve 2015-2558 with all staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Prawl,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Mantzoros. Roll call, please.
Mr. Manzoris?
Yes.
Mr. Prawl?
Yes.
Ms. Tuckerbuck?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Keller?
Yes, that motion carries.
I'll make a motion to approve 2015-2559 with all staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Prawl,
Second.
second by Mr. Mantzoros. Roll call, please.
Mr. Manzoris?
Yes.
Mr. Prawl?
Yes.
Ms. Tuckerbuck?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Keller?
Yes, that motion carries. And we'll move on to item B, the communities at Glen Ross. If the clerk would please read items 1 and 2 into the record, please.
Item 1, 2015-2565, a request by Pulte Homes for approval of a final development plan for the communities at Glen Ross Section 6, consisting of 30 single-family lots on 9.927 acres zoned R2 PMU, one family residential district with a planned mixed-use overlay district located on Eagle Walk Road and White Fawn Run. Item 2, 2015-2566, a request by Pulte Homes for approval of a final subdivision plat for the communities at Glen Ross Section 6, consisting of 30 single-family lots on 9.927 acres zoned R2 PMU, one family residential district with a planned mixed-use overlay district, located on Eagle Walk Road and White Fawn Run.
Okay,
Thank you. This section is located just west of the railroad tracks and just south of Section 5. It's zoned R2 PMU. It's aerial here. It's fairly flat, really flat site. Back in August of last year, the applicant received an amended preliminary development plan and amended subdivision plat for Section 6 through 10 of the communities of Glen Ross, which are located north of Cheshire Road. This is the first section since then, since the amendment to go through. This proposed development is consistent with what was approved, and it's in the yellow portion is the actually Section 6 of the site. From a design perspective, it's going to be similar to the communities of Glen Ross. Minimum house size is 1,600 square foot for a ranch and 1,800 for a multi-story structure. 40% of the front elevation needs to be natural materials. The engineering department is currently reviewing the final construction drawings for this. This, as indicated, this subject site would be connected through Section 4 through Eagle Walk Road. Staff is recommending that the next section, which is 7 just to the east, connect to Balmoral Drive to extend to Cheshire Road for safety reasons. And actually, Section 7 is submitted for next month. So we're reviewing that, I believe, in March. The lot sizes are consistent with the remainder of communities of Glen Ross, with lots ranging from about 8,700 square feet to 13,000 square feet, with lot widths of 65 feet. The lighting plan would need to be reviewed and approved by the chief building official. This site would require street trees to be approved by the Shade Tree Commission. The open space in this area is actually the rear portion of the lots that abut the railroad track. It's almost 7/10 of an acre. Staff has requested a 10 to 12 foot high landscape mound adjacent to the tracks to be consistent with what was required in Section 4. And actually, that will be within a homeowners association, which would be responsible for the maintenance of that mound, which is consistent with what occurred in Section 4. Staff recommends final development plan approval with 2 conditions and final subdivision plat approval with 7 conditions. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
commission member questions?
I think we're just back to the, not just the open space part, but the actual park development portion. Since we're working this section from the north to the south, when can you expect to see active park space? There's currently one, I believe, off Eagle Walk, but it's such a small, barely top lot size that if we're going to wait to require that till it hits Cheshire Road, you've added 500 homes. So what have we talked? Did you talk with the developer, or we really brought up the part where we need to start seeing the active park space built, or extend the top lot that's currently there off of Eagle Walk in those communities?
Yeah, I understand the issue that you raised, and I think they've heard that too. I think the plan, really from the beginning of communities of Glen Ross, even though it's changed through the years, but the plan in terms of active open space has always been along Cheshire Road, and there have been different section numbers applied to that through the various iterations of the plan, but that it would come when that roundabout intersection with Cheshire Road would be developed. It's obviously an expensive piece of infrastructure, but it also leads you right into what now is conceptualized as a pool and a bigger clubhouse, I guess, for lack of a better term, and then the active open space. So today that would be under sections 9 or 10. I can't quite remember the number, but you're right, working it from north to south. So that's been the plan, and then there'll be a lot of active open space developed. What the developers communicated to me is that they certainly tend to do that, and it's an important part of the overall plan to them for the north side of Cheshire Road, but also for the development to the south side of Cheshire Road. We're working with them, just like we reconceptualize these sections 6 through 10 on the north side. We're working with Pulte Homes now to on some requests of theirs to reconceptualize the development on the south side of Cheshire Road too. So that would come back through to you with an amended preliminary. It's easy to kind of lose the context as this is a big subdivision. But basically that parkland will sit in the middle of the full development and fulfills their requirement for that. So I hear you. If I had to decide whether it's likely would they just stop right now and not put this in, I don't think so. Not in today's market and based on what they've described to us. I think at the time of zoning, and we certainly impressed upon we'd like that parkland sooner and the pool sooner rather than later if they could do it. But at the time of zoning, that might have been the time really to say it's got to go in with this particular section or not. So they're executing their plan under their zoning and their preliminary, notwithstanding anything you just said, and we've communicated to them that we sure would like that sooner rather than later. I know there's quite a lot of costs and some technicalities related to the road work that I think they probably, the high degree of likelihood, there might have already been a process with that. But
I should probably jump in and just let you know that the widening of Cheshire comes along with those next phases, and they're in the very preliminary stages of developing the plan for that widening. So that is kind of a big piece to bite off because it will include those road improvements. So, but we have been submitted a plan that includes 8, 9, and 10 as one. So my understanding is they would do those relatively quickly. So hopefully that kind of alleviates a little bit of that concern because they all kind of fall into place at the same time.
they're
So,
advancing these sections, as Jen's saying,
Yeah.
faster than we originally anticipated. I think faster than they originally anticipated
Yeah.
as well. So that will get you to the parkland sooner, I guess, is the best answer I have.
The other question or comment is kind of related to how quickly will these newer sections have direct access to Balmoral to Cheshire versus through the subdivision roads like, the Stub Eagle Walks and stuff like that. Would that?
Well, we're putting a condition on this. The next section, which is 7, this would connect to Balmoral.
Okay.
So 7.
That's the missing piece between the yellow up there and the section that's developing right now.
Okay.
That connects all of
And
it.
that's actually in for the March meeting.
Okay.
So.
Anyone else? Is the applicant here? Hello again.
Your lucky night.
Yeah, Brian Pranger, 5500 New Albany Road, Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No, I would just echo what Jennifer and David said. I mean, Pulte's moving full steam ahead on these. I think, like Jennifer said, we got 8 through 10 in for review engineering right now. So that part will be coming sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. Anyone with questions for the applicant? Okay, is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this item? Raise your hand. Last chance. Do I have one back here? You, Mr. DeGenova?
Yeah, that's like comment.
Will you come up to the microphone, please?
I wasn't going to talk tonight, but since the park came up.
Will you
Joe
tell us?
DeGenova,
Thank you.
68 Somerset Wesleyan Woods, 3rd Ward Councilman. All the items on the agenda this evening are in my ward, so I felt I better show up and get a better understanding of it. To answer your question on the park, Dean, we're working on hopefully with the developers and builders in that area for a 30-acre plus park similar to Smith Park for the constituents in that area. And we'll hopefully get that done in the next 4 years. It's all cooperation as far as who wants to donate us 30 acres. If not, the city will invest in some sort of impact fees or something to purchase those acres so that we can build a park out there and they can have all the I guess the things that most of the city has. The southeast section of the city has not been planned out accordingly as far as parks. And since we have the Y built, we have the Smith Park, Mingo Park. We felt that there should be a third park, and that should be in that area, somewhere between, I guess, Cheshire and Glen Ross in that area.
Okay.
So we are working on it, and unfortunately, I have 4 more years. So
Thank you.
well, hopefully, it won't be a dying issue.
I just build on those remarks. I'm not sure I had a chance to let the commission know. I know Lisa and Joe know that in the final budget, there was a Parks and Recreation Director position included in the final budget. You might have read that. And so I think they're moving through various hiring processes at this point, at least the position description, that sort of thing. So obviously
That'll be priority for him.
Has a lot to
Him or her, yes.
will have a lot on their plate that they start on day one, but this could be an item.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 2015-2565 with all staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Prahl,
Second.
second by Mr. Mantzoros. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mantzoros?
Yes.
Mr. Prahl?
Yes.
Ms. Tuckerbuck?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Keller?
Yes, motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 2015-2566 with all staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Prahl,
Second.
second by Mr. Mantzoros. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mantzoros?
Yes.
Mr. Prahl?
Yes.
Ms. Tuckerbuck?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Keller?
Yes, that motion carries. And we will move on to item C. Would the clerk please read this into the record?
Item C, 2015-2594, a request by TNR Properties for a concept plan review for the redevelopment of the western 9 holes of the Delaware Golf Club with a mixed-use development on approximately 61 acres zoned A1 Agricultural District and located on the east side of US 23 south of Pollock Road.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eflin?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, this case is as captioned. It's a concept plan this evening. Really an update of a couple of previous concept plans that have been brought forward. I think probably those of us on staff that have been here during that time and probably members of the audience are pretty familiar with that. I think arguably maybe some of you who weren't on the commission during those times, this is an opportunity as well to kind of bring you up to speed on where a concept, and again, just concept plans have been on this particular development, and there have been some changes. So I will keep my remarks brief. I think just to let the audience know, since nobody spoke for the 2 subdivisions, which never happens. Everybody wants to talk about subdivision. I assume you're all here for this case. This case is a concept plan. There is no formal public hearing. Typically, the commission will allow some public comment. It's really the concept plan format is an opportunity for the applicant at the end of the day to present their case and get some informal feedback, obviously from staff. We're doing that fairly regularly anyway with many applicants, but from the commission as well. And thus, what we're trying to do, because we anticipated a room that was fairly full, we're trying to be appreciative of everybody's time, still allow people to get issues out, the commission, the chair will allow comments to the extent they allow them. But if you didn't see the signups outside, please sign up out there. I think we collected a few of them, but if you wanted to make some comments, I think generally the commission has not been particularly interested in hearing repeat comments. One is as sufficient as hearing the same comment 50 times, especially in a concept plan review. So I'll put that out there. Is there something else I should mention in that regard, Madam Chair? Obviously, we just want to maintain decorum and civility and all that kind of good stuff, which I'm sure everybody will. So with that, I'll do a brief update, and then it's Tom Hart is here, I assume for the applicant, and is prepared to give his update and receive feedback. See if I can work the technology. So first of all, the agenda and the staff report is available on our website. So I'm not going to go through that ad nauseum. It's out there. You can read it and certainly ask questions about it. Again, it is concept level. But I think there are kind of 5 big changes to the plan and to the concept over previous concept reviews, previous iterations. I think probably the first thing is illustrated in this location map is that the applicant is really now focusing and narrowing in on just the land that is in the city of Delaware. Previously, and you can see kind of shaded out in the concept plan, areas that aren't in the city of Delaware. They're in primarily Liberty Township, a little bit Delaware Township as well, and the golf course and development cuts across both of those townships to the east. And so that, because of the nature of the parcels here, sometimes we can get a little bit lost in the geography and what's in what jurisdiction. But in the orange up on the screens, that is the portion that is in the city of Delaware currently. It represents about 61 acres, give or take. About 15 and a half of those acres are the Ohio Wesleyan-owned Perkins Observatory property, and then the balance, about 45 acres or so, would be in the city of Delaware and part of what's today the golf course. So in terms of zoning, today's zoning for the property is in major open space for the golf course. Again, you can see the jurisdictional boundaries in orange here. It's the line, kind of, you can see it outlines the same shape there. The blue dot in the middle of the screen, if you will, is institutional. It really represents Perkins Observatory piece. This actually the current comprehensive plan map, I'm sorry. The current future comprehensive plan land use map notes this as major open space. When the plan was done in 2003, 2004, all the golf courses in the planning area were noted as major open space. That was just a decision that was made. Makes sense. They're all golf courses at the time, still are all golf courses at the time. And so that's the comprehensive plan future land use map. Obviously, with Perkins Observatory and Ohio Wesleyan owning that, the blue piece in the middle, that's institutional use. Probably most germanely and most directly of importance is this is the zoning map. The zoning map, and you can see the red outline again. The green inside the red is zoned A1 Agricultural District, and that's the piece inside the city of Delaware. The other red line that is surrounding some white areas to the east is again in Liberty, Delaware Townships. That's just trying to show you where some of those future areas are shown on the plan, kind of grayed out. But the green is agricultural. And there are some rights that this landowner, any landowner in an A1 zoning district have under that A1 district to pursue more than just agricultural uses. Could be including residential development and that sort of thing. And we could talk a little bit more about that, but it's also outlined in the staff report. Here's an aerial photograph, should we need it. And again, the red outline shows you on this property the portion that's in the city of Delaware. We often reference that. So come to today, what we've captured as the 2016 concept plan, just to try to keep things straight here a little bit as we might talk back and forth. But a couple of the other major changes are that down in the south portion of this, you'll see right now on this concept, multifamily development, about 200 units proposed in concept format. In previous versions of this, there have been a number of previous versions, but I guess the most immediate previous version of the sort of the A plan included big box retail in that portion of the site. As I say, the applicant's kind of narrowing in on the piece of ground and narrowing in a little bit more on uses I assume that they think are more marketable and make more sense, and so that it doesn't include big box in this particular version of the concept plan, but it does include the multifamily in that southern portion of the site. They also preserved the lake in the last version of the plans. The lake was not preserved, and the wooded area to the east, northeast of the lake was not preserved in those versions of the concept plan. This version of the concept plan, you can see those areas are preserved, as well as there's a wooded area on the very south side of the site that leads into a ravine and a stream on another adjacent property. That's been preserved as well, and in previous versions that wasn't preserved. Outlots, there were 8 outlots shown along US 23. In previous versions there are 7. They still cover the same area right along US 23. But one less outlot, and the one less outlot occurs south of what's shown as the main entrance point where the roundabout is, towards the southern piece of property. There were 4 there before, there's 3 there now. Again, it covers the same area though. On the north side, near the Methesco campus, if you will, and I'm sorry I don't know my number of my holes on the golf course to reference that. You guys probably know that far better than I do, but in any case, on the north side, kind of on this diagram, to the right of the large blue pond along 23, previously there had been shown in most of those concept versions, not all of them, but most of them showed 31 detached single-family dwellings. You'll hear staff also refer to those as landominiums, detached single-family condominiums. They go by a number of names, sometimes patio home condos. So that's what we're referring to. In this version of the plan, and it's impossible to see up here, if you got the staff report, you might be able to see it, but the diagram looks the same, but what the note indicates is actually 62 units, so they would be duplex units. These would be something, at least again in concept, akin to what's happening at the landings of Glen Ross. If any of you are familiar with that development, there are some attached single family in a duplex configuration. There's also some detached landominiums in that particular development, and then more multifamily buildings with 4 to 6 units in it. But just to give you some frame of reference, I guess, that's in the area. So that's a change too from the previous, going from the 31 to the 62 in attached duplex. And I'd probably say the biggest change and the biggest update for last, as I know Tom Hart's going to go over, is really one of the major issues coming out of last concept meetings, and even really the first concept meeting, was lighting impacts on Perkins Observatory and Ohio Wesleyan's property, which is obviously completely surrounded by the area in any version of the concepts that we've seen to date. So those issues were raised, and in the intervening 6, almost 7 years at this point, I think it's getting close to 7 years, the applicant has worked with Ohio Wesleyan and Perkins Observatory to, as we understand it, sign an agreement relative to lighting and lighting standards. That would require a lot of reduced lighting, and I think some effort by the city and captured in any formal zoning in terms of being able to enforce it and that sort of thing. But would also allow private enforcement rights between Ohio Wesleyan and whoever owns the golf course moving forward. So Tom will go into that, I'm sure, in much more detail. And frankly, it's very technical, and I find it very technical. So we have to, one of the things we need to do is find a way to translate that into what does that mean in terms of development and how it might impact development. So I think that's something, a question that we've raised. A couple of the major issues then that might be outstanding, those are a number of the changes, and I think one of the major issues that at least has an agreement around it relative to the lighting. I think first and foremost, and I'm sure this will come to a shock as all of you in the room, but the homeowners association and the private sewage treatment plant, and also the process of land application, because it's not just the area of the plant, but it's the process of applying of how you treat the sewage. Part of that is land application. That has been, the golf course area has been used for that land application process. That's an EPA permit. Obviously, all this started out in the county, not under city utilities and city sewer and that sort of thing. So there is an existing permit out there, and I think one of the major, and this has been raised before, one of the major issues for us as staff is really the land contemplated for development here is subject in part to that land application process. And I think there's some technicalities and technical questions about how much land and where is the land and can you change the permit and how do you change the permit. Ultimately, OEPA is the authority on that permit. And so that is still, I think, a question in our mind that remains unresolved, kind of like there was a private agreement between Perkins and this landowner relative to lighting. One could contemplate at least an agreement or an amended, I'm not sure what the EPA term is, but an amended land application plan or whatever it is relative to the sewer. Because I think the issue is, it's been clearly expressed that the homeowner association wants to maintain the sewage plant and then also the process of the land application. And I think a couple of other major items for us as staff that we've identified is the access point. This is US 23 access controlled by ODOT, the Ohio Department of Transportation at the end of the day. And part of that typically involves a traffic study determining exactly where that access point on US 23 might be. If you look at the ODOT access management plan, which again is a general plan until you start talking about specific developments or access points or new roadways, but it's a general plan that has the goal of consolidating access points along US 23 so that at traffic signals, so you don't have a traffic signal every 500 feet. For example, it's consolidated, it's made safer, and there are safer intersections. So in this corridor, certainly along the frontage of the golf course property, ODOT's plan would generally look for a consolidated access point. Now taking that from, and we're at conceptual, so that's where we are, but taking that from conceptual in general to where would ODOT approve an access point at the end of the day? Can access points change the layout of plans? They can change them. They can also not change them. But you know, they certainly have an effect on the layout of a plan, and that becomes an important major issue. Where could this access point be? I think we also have some long-range improvements in the city that would look to build on the ODOT plan and try to connect Pollock Road, and we talked about this before, Commissioners, Pollock Road over to this signalized access point, wherever ODOT may determine its location to be in the future. But I guess the point there is, if it's, you know, where it's shown right now is about halfway up a median dividing wall for ODOT. And typically in working with our engineers and, you know, over the course of 6-7 years, listening to ODOT talk about access in the area and controlling access, it could be that this access point is 900 feet or so to the north, kind of where the wall ends at what I think we all call the Perkins driveway as opposed to the main driveway, just to kind of orient you. And that may change the layout here in a concept plan. Again, we're on a concept plan, so, you know, changes happen. Sometimes desired and sometimes not desired. But that's a major issue. I think another major issue for us in taking concept to some sort of formal application is getting at least a preliminary stormwater analysis so we know where ponds, the blue on this diagram, where ponds may have to go. How do you manage the stormwater? There are some creeks and streams but also putting hardscape in creates water runoff, and you have to manage that water runoff, and it's regulated by us as a city, but it's also regulated by Ohio EPA rules and requirements as well. And that's another one of those elements that can change how a site is laid out, where you have to put stormwater ponds can change where you can put things that aren't stormwater ponds, development areas. So that's a major issue as well. I think other sort of more standard major development issues, if you will, for us in kind of any consideration would be to ensure high design quality and materials are used and high quality built into what we've suggested as an appropriate zoning vehicle. If you want to do a mixed-use development, as a planned mixed-use overlay under the Delaware Code. And that would typically get its own zoning, sort of a mini zoning code written with it that would ensure that high design quality, high design materials that you just don't find in our base zoning districts. There are some requirements for those things in a base district, but not to the extent that we would look to do and that we've discussed in concept form with the applicant relative to the houses or the multifamily or the commercial outlots. And building on that, I think another issue we always look at is in any kind of zone change approaches, are the mixture of uses appropriate? Is the density appropriate? Is the intensity appropriate? The location of the uses, and certainly the buffering between uses is something we spend a lot of time talking about as a commission and a city council at the end of the day. Lastly, I think the commercial sub areas in plan format like this at a conceptual level, it certainly looks like we're stripping out commercial on US 23. I think the nature of some of the conversations up to this point have been to not do that, and you can do some of those things so that it's not just punching out outlots or stripping it out for commercial, but you can handle some of those issues with design and quality and materials, but you can also you also need to look at some of the uses relative to the outlots. And that's another advantage of using this mixed use overlay zoning vehicle. If this was to move forward, we could say, for example, and this is just conceptual. So for example, around the main access point, wherever that ends up being, typically the two lots immediately adjacent to that point are typically the most desirable lots, I think for obvious reasons. Those may allow a little bit more intense use or a little bit different use than the lot next to those, which may just in this case be office or be medical, or those are issues that I think we need to still discuss and talk about outside of what materials are used on the building and what's the roof pitch and the dormers and all that kind of good stuff, which is a level of detail that comes with the process, but not a concept. Although we have talked about those things with the developer, I think generally speaking, they've been amenable to this approach. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this concept in front of you at this point. I think the last point I like to make, we have one more slide here I know that the applicant has provided, is that the A1 district does provide some rights to the applicant today. I just think that's important for everybody to know and to recognize. That the A1 district allows a range of uses with a conditional use permit process, which is a process that the applicant could undergo today. They can seek to have some single family and perhaps even duplex development on the sites, at least for the property inside the city of Delaware. We don't have a concept for that. We haven't gone down that, the applicant hasn't gone down that path at this point, but I just, there are rights that accord to this developer or this landowner under the A1 district that, when I say A1, I say it's an agricultural district. I think people automatically just think of farms, but there's a range of uses too that the land can be put to. May require some other conditional use permit processes and stuff, but assuming that those tests can be met, that would be available to this landowner as well as it would be to anyone in the A1 district. And so I think the last, now it's kind of difficult to see even on 90-inch television screens. Hopefully you have some packets in front of you, or you can, at the chair's direction, you can feel free to come up and try to squint these down a little. I think Tom's going to talk about it a little bit. That this is demonstrating at least a very preliminary, what I consider kind of a rudimentary sightline study that shows you the multifamily portion from the back of existing house at the back of Inverness Drive, looking kind of down the hill, and put in the context of the grade. You have significant grade. There's about 70 foot of drop between there and US 23. But also showing you, and again, it's hard to see here, but showing you mounding and landscaping with evergreen trees. Now, again, that's one of the things I mentioned. Is it wide enough? Is it big enough? Could you do it here with a stream corridor? Those are all things, those are all details we'd have to drill down through. Is it the right mix of uses? But I think it does start to show you that with it's possible that with some mounding and landscaping, it's possible to start to screen some of these. Wouldn't be an open golf hole that you're looking down, obviously, but it would start to be some buffering to whatever a use might be to the west of those homes on Inverness. And Tom can certainly go, or Ron can certainly go into more detail on that. I think that's the staff report we have this evening, and it really is a chance for the applicant to provide an update, and then any public comment at the chair and commission's discretion. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, Commissioner.
I have too many questions, to be honest with you. For a concept plan, I just, I was here when the first one came through, and to be honest with you, what we've done is we've taken out the big box, shoved as many people into a small area as we possibly can by using multi-families. Okay, I don't know what happens to the rest of the golf course. There's just so many questions that I don't, and the lighting part of it is way beyond my expertise. I don't understand it. I don't understand what happens if 5 years after it's built, if the lighting is more than what they agreed to, whose house has to go? It just, there is so much here that I can't comprehend yet to even begin to see it working. It wasn't going to work last time. And, I guess, Dave, you say they did reach a signed agreement with Perkins?
Yes, that's my understanding. We have a copy of that as well. But I think that's part of what Tom would really go into much more detail and help, I think, us all understand a little bit better. So,
like I say, I've got so many questions I could take up the rest of the night. I think probably more important what many of the people out of the audience feel that needs to be done. So I'll turn it back over.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicant. If I could have your name and address for the record,
Sure.
please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name's Tom Hart. My address is 2 Miranova Place in Columbus. I represent the applicant, TNR Properties. With me is Ron Sabatino tonight from TNR Properties. I do want to address the point, Mr. Halter, because at concept plan stage, which staff did recommend us to file and start the process, we are general. We probably won't be able to answer every question that you would have to answer to file a formal zoning request. So, we will try to address questions tonight and give you the detail we have now, but I can't, I just want to say up front, we are a concept plan. We do fully intend to file a formal rezoning, and as Dave had kind of a laundry list of items that are in the staff report that, we would be required to address with a formal filing. So we'll do our best on the general points and the questions that come up, and that our goal tonight is to hear the questions, get the feedback, and reintroduce the site with the differences. And what I'm going to try to do is make a highlight presentation of a couple items, and get to that feedback and input, if I may, if that makes sense. I'm not going to go back over the site plan because I think Dave, as always, was very thorough in talking about our unit counts and the differences between what we, what we had proposed previously and what we're looking at now. I had that prepared. I think looking at the site plan and the application that's on file, it's on the website, right, Dave, is the best place for everybody to get educated about the general concepts. I will say one comment on that is we are trying very hard to follow, have the sub areas follow the existing golf holes, the natural ridge lines, the the breaks in topography and protect the major tree lines. That is, the beauty of the site is valuable, and that is what we're trying to respect with the development plan very carefully. I think at our last concept plan hearing, I think Dave actually prepared an overview that showed those areas against, the natural areas versus the development areas and what exists today and what we were trying to do. And it's pretty close, and that's we're trying to stick to that. In terms of our goals and what the applicant's trying to accomplish and what we believe are clear benefits to the city, I do want to talk about those. First, this long-term and this initial plan is designed to be a mixed-use community with proximity to employment, recreation, services, shopping amenities, housing options. We have a surge in our market in general. Anybody that's any member of local government that's involved in MORPC knows about the studies showing how the baby boom population is moving into different housing choices, and that is part of what we're proposing here. Lots and lots of people in this country are going to move out of single family into something else that's not a single family home. We want to try to accomplish meeting that market need in a beautiful place. The project provides for office, commercial, retail, and that residential, different residential options. That will increase land value and jobs and taxes to the city. It'll support the city's investment made really before the downturn in major capital sewer plant improvements. We intend to have this development be on the city's sewer system. The overall economic development of this project could definitely be harnessed with the finance mechanisms that are allowed in the revised code, such as TIFs or other economic development tools, to throw off other value that could support infrastructure improvements, off-site or close to the site. Again, the real goal and the way to protect the existing open space that's on this golf course and is up against the community to the east is to have the value created with this development that allows you to keep that golf course and open space viable. And that would be the end result of this plan. There's a revenue stream created that allows the viability in the future of the golf course. I do want to cover the agreement with Perkins, and I see Dr. Burns is here also. He may comment at his discretion. But I did provide some, significant level of detail in our prepared comments. I'm not going to go through that. I will just say in summary that what the applicant did was with Perkins and the Ohio Wesleyan folks is retain the really one of the foremost, I think, dark sky expert groups in the world, I believe, the Dark Sky Partners, and they did a couple things up front. They measured the current light impact on Perkins as it existed, when they did that initial study. So they set a baseline on the amount of light that impacts Perkins today. They also then came up with a lighting plan. They really through computer modeling to determine what would the impact be of new development, of the plan we had actually back then, not this current one. What would the impact be in terms of light impact on Perkins? And they came up with what the impact would be and then how to control that impact. So it was baseline study, the current light impact, what the development would do in terms of light, and then how to control it. From that, we developed a lighting plan, very appropriate. And it actually has a full-on light scenario and a security light scenario, so good demo there. And with that lighting plan was a whole series of mitigation strategies, both physical controlling of light and procedural controls of light through legal process. But mainly the outcome of this study was that there should be a level of increased lighting that should never be exceeded. There should be a level that should not be exceeded, because above that level, the functionality of the telescope and the observatory really starts to degrade. And so Mr. Sabatino agreed with that. That standard was put in the agreement that was signed with Wesleyan and Perkins. The basis of that standard is saying we're only going to go to this level of new lighting. That lighting is going to be very much controlled. There's going to be an overall lighting plan to be enforced on the site. Every single parcel, to answer the 5-year question, that's sold off into the future has to have its own lighting plan that has to be under the overall plan. So it's kind of a declining balance system. You have an overall light level, and then you have individual light plans that have to be under the overall level. That's going to be subject to final development plans. It'll come back through here. It'll be subject to city zoning enforcement. And probably, one of the important things, it'll be subject to private rights of enforcement by Perkins and Ohio Wesleyan with what's called a confession of judgment provision and an injunctive provision, so that if there's a violation of the light standards out there, they can go to court quick, and the violator really doesn't have any defenses. It's an agreed to confession of judgment approach in court. Those are the basics, and I realize you might have more questions on that, and we can deal with those. Another point, just another basic point, is a significant part of that agreement relates to the type of lighting that would be used. There's a lighting called amber LED that probably has the most favorable impact in terms of light control and not throwing off light into the night sky, and that's a key part of the agreement also. In terms of the golf course and operations, I know there's a lot of questions on that. The applicant's very sensitive to club members, the employees, and obviously the neighbors surrounding the course. It's no secret, and there's been more and more examples that Central Ohio golf course operations and really everywhere in the country continue to be under stress. This club's not accepted from that. In the end, the golf experience is majorly affected along the western edge by US 23. It's literally, you have an impact when a truck goes by and you're lining up your second shot or trying to putt or what have you. I know a good example of that is in Dave's staff report, talking about the need to make sure any kind of bike path along that line also have some safety provisions for the bikers. It's no different when somebody's golfing out there today. It's quite a different experience than it was originally along those road holes. But again, like I said, an important outcome of this proposal will be trying to keep the open space to the east to continue to support home values and continue to have a golf course there. But what that means is we have to have some economic development of the western edge of the course, and that's what we're trying to do. We do have ideas and concepts for redesign. They're not determined quite yet. They're not finalized at all. But that redesign, keeping that course viable, keeping it in operation depends on the development of the western border along 23. Dave mentioned the ODOT study that kind of governs the road access issue in the area. Obviously, we've been in contact with ODOT. We'll continue to talk with ODOT. We understand that any formal zoning filing will need to have dialogue with our neighbors about the access. It'll have dialogue with the city engineer and ODOT to be able to come to the city with a proposal for exactly where the access goes, how it's going to be governed. That'll be part of a required traffic study that is part of any formal zoning filing. That traffic study will also, by the city engineer standards, take a look at access through the site, connection through the site. That's going to be required, I think, in the scope of the study. I think Jen also put that in her report. We're going to work with everybody involved in that. Certainly that whole thing is an opportunity to have a much safer, modern controlled access. It does that connectivity also, not only for traffic, but also for pedestrian. And the site is having a very important set of bike path connections, both internally with the community to the east, and also with the balance of Delaware's bike system. This will be a nice place to ride your bike and access to a glass of wine or some ice cream or whatever you want, hopefully, on our property. In terms of Dave's raising the issue of the land application issue and the viability of the current Dornoch wastewater treatment plant, we're confident that issue will. We've had our own dialogue with Ohio EPA and the leadership of the homeowners association. We're confident because the original permit to install that Ohio EPA approved for the site said that it's really a quote, 76 acres are required and 144 are provided for the effluent application. So in any kind of redesign, we feel confident that there's details to be determined, but there's enough ability to land apply and keep the current wastewater system on it does today. Is Dave, again, not to be repetitive, Dave did show the sightline analysis. I think with it shows, with the development and a filing of a zoning application that only includes the Delaware portion of this land, Delaware City portion, really it'd be very difficult to see this from existing homes. Certainly the homes that are in the cul-de-sac, that ends up furthest to the west, there's an impact, at construction and installation. Frame plan put in that would somewhat abate over time as the mounding and trees take hold. But it'll be hard to see this development from the east, except for that sight line, what that sight line diagram shows. Overall, again, just in terms of the benefits, what this proposal would do, what the goals would be, and what it would do for existing residents to the east. Again, we believe that the development here will keep green spaces to the east viable and continue to support housing values that they have. We'll have improved connections in terms of for pedestrians and vehicles with safe access to 23 under ODOT's plan. We believe very strongly that the wastewater treatment plant that's operational today will continue in the same manner if desired. And that we'll be able to, the market will attract retail and commercial amenities and possibly places to work very close to home. And that we will, when we come for formal hearings, we expect to have a viable future golf course plan to property values. So that's our presentation. We're happy to try to address questions, Madam Chair, in any manner you want, whether now or after the audience, however you see fit. Thank you.
I think first we'll handle commission member questions.
Okay, sure.
I have several, but I'll let you guys go first.
I just want to echo Commissioner Halter's statement that a lot of this, particularly the lighting plan, is way over our heads. Have you had an opportunity to share the plan and the impact that the Perkins Observatory yet?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mantazaros.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I did a poor job, I think, explaining that. We developed that plan with a committee of professionals at the university and with Dr. Burns, including, he was one of those professionals. You know, using that Dark Sky Partners outfit from Arizona, I think it is, we developed the lighting controls and the system of enforcement with Perkins and Wesley. You know, I think reading it, and maybe I will admit I have to read it twice myself when I haven't looked at it for a while. It's pretty basic when you break down the parts pieces. You know, there's an overall control, a not to exceed, and then every one of the individual plans, any parcel that's sold off, to answer Mr. Halter's 5-year question, has to be subject to the baseline overall plan forever. So we agreed that there'd more light increase. There's going to be some light increase, but it can't be more than 8% when all the lights are on, and 5% when the lights are at security mode. That's it. And within that banking of light, within that overall allowance for light increase, none of the parcels can go over that overall number, you know, when they're all combined. And
Yeah, it's pretty technical.
So
I think I'm just bad at explaining it, but it's sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So my question on that topic though is, and I'm going to try to dummy this down to an understanding that
Thank you.
hopefully I can understand, is if there's a level that all the lighting cannot exceed, if I'm buying a property around the Perkins Observatory and there's going to be a lighting plan in the development, will that take into account if I decide that I'm going to install extra lighting outside of my house, or if I want to increase the wattage of the bulbs that came when I bought the house?
Yes, there'll be privately written and filed deed restrictions that we'll work out with Wesleyan's lawyers, and that each individual parcel will be subject to those deed restrictions and this whole lighting agreement and the zoning regulations that come from it. Both, so there's private enforcement by Wesleyan and Perkins, and then there's public enforcement suit. We're gonna put this in the zoning text also. So if you do things that aren't in the lighting plan, when that individual parcel or sub area, however the thing's parceled out, when it comes in for final development plan, it's going to have to include a lighting plan for that specific piece of ground. And that when all those lighting plans are added up, they can't go above the total.
And if 10 years after it is bought and the property owner decides to put in extra lighting, does the city, based on the zoning, have restriction over that? Is the homeowners association over that? Who would be over that issue?
There's 3 layers, okay? One is, yes, the city would have zoning enforcement regulation on it, subject to the overall total, and the original lighting plan that was turned in for that sub area, number 1. Number 2, there is a requirement in our agreement that there be a master association created that also will govern. They're really the front line of enforcement along with Perkins. When Perkins, if Perkins sees a violation, they go to the homeowner association first and the city, and they start the process that's laid out in here for both public and private enforcement. Part of that enforcement comes from the fact that the applicant has agreed to purchase a fairly sophisticated light meter that is hooked up to the internet and gives real-time light data. Those meters will be placed out on the site so that if there's a violation, you know, there's a software program that should, I don't exactly know how it works, but we're buying a state-of-the-art light monitor that's on site to be used by Perkins to monitor all these parcels. So that in terms of light measurement, over time, that's always there. You know, their ability to, they also have a right to come on each one of the parcels and do their own evaluation. Perkins does. And I should say, and again, Dr. Burns can speak to this if he chooses, but I think he knows when that telescope's affected. You know, when he's using it, people, when they're using it, they know when it's affected. And if one of these parcels is affecting it under the agreement, he's going to know, and it's going to show up on that light meter that's on site, and they're going to have enforcement rights that are private, that are quick in court, but it's injunctive relief and a confession of judgment, and he's going to have zoning enforcement, you know, through the city. And I'm sorry, did I make it worse?
It was at a level I could understand.
Okay, well, I don't mean to imply any. I just want to know if I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
Concerned about zoning enforcement, okay, and all of us on the planning commission are totally aware of it, and everybody on city council. Trying to get the final rights to a zoning violation could take years. I don't care what kind of agreement you have. By the time the courts get done with you, we have to sit and wait, and then we have to do this and we have to do that. You know, my concern is once again, and I've got other besides just the lighting, but with the lighting is when Clark Griswold moves in and puts up his Christmas wham, okay? And now I understand, and then someone comes along and says, you gotta turn them off, and Clark says, I'm not turning off my Christmas tree decorations. Never mind, it's Christmas time, okay? Now the battle begins. I mean, we have tried to get the railroad to clean up stuff on zoning. And now we're into what, 10, 15 years in some of it?
I'd like to address that, not the railroad part, but Wesleyan said the same thing to us, okay? They said, we don't want to just count on public enforcement through zoning. We want private legal rights. We want to go on your property. We want to be able to go to court and get injunctive relief where we have to respond. First they go to our the master association, but we gave them pretty significant private enforcement rights. A confession of judgment means you're guilty, I'm guilty. They don't have to prove anything when they go to court. There's an agreement that says a violation is it's basically a strict liability standard. We've broken our agreement. And, you know,
So
I can't,
I can't. A lawyer in the world that would touch it.
well, I'm not going to tell you that.
That's what I'm talking about, okay?
'Cause,
Let's be fair about it, okay? But I'm just saying, until we see the whole thing, and then the city has a chance to get somebody who knows a lot about this stuff to finally come to the ruling with this, I think that's going to be one of our first.
Sure.
things. You know, you say you're working with a homeowners association, okay? I've got a feeling that it's not working out exactly the way you had planned by the crowd in here, okay?
Mr. Halter, I mean, this is a concept plan hearing. Again, you know, we
Yeah, but you're asking
don't,
for our input, okay?
right? But we,
We're asking for our input, and the input is gonna take a zoning and then a
Yes, sir.
plan approval, okay? And, you know, it's very difficult for us to, at least for me, to say, gee, I think it's a great plan. There's just too many unanswered questions.
understand.
Now, you have a right to bring your plan forward, okay? And, you know what you need in the amount of income and these buildings and commercial lots to pay for all this stuff. And I don't blame you at all, okay? I'm just saying, I think there's just a ton of questions
Yes, sir.
that you or I can't answer here tonight. And I don't think anybody on this commission can. So,
I agree.
if you're asking for approval from me, with the information I have, I find it hard to say, gee, I think it's a good plan, or do I find it hard to say it's a bad plan?
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the lighting,
Yes.
So assuming that we are able to somehow control the lighting in the housing, and assuming that everyone follows all the regulations, and there is the removal of roadway lighting in residential areas, my question to you then is, what we end up with are a lot of trees, rolling topography, and lots of people in the dark. And so how do we, from the Perkins Observatory standpoint, we want it as dark as possible. But from a residential standpoint, when I go to sleep at night, I go to sleep with all the lights in the outside of my house on, because I know that we have issues in our neighborhoods with people breaking into cars and all kinds of things. And so I use my light as a deterrent for that. So how do we put this many people together and then make an extra effort to make it in the dark?
Well, 2 points, and I don't have all the answers on that. I'm not the lighting expert, but the majority of the impact of a site like this, of this proposal, or anything else that would be by Perkins, is going to come from the commercial property. It's going to come from the commercial property. The impact of residential is not, it's not even close. So, the major controls, and now the controls we have in this thing apply to both residential and commercial. And there's definitely things you can do with cutoff lighting and certain specs of lighting that are way better than others. That's in your code today. You have a code that, because of Perkins, controls residential lighting more than other places. But the real impact from what we got from the science is the commercial property has to be very much controlled to keep Perkins, to essentially hold them to where they're still functional. So, we will have a lot of detail in the zoning text about what those residential controls are, but it's nowhere near as important as what we're doing, on the commercial side. And Madam Chair, we'll be prepared to go through the details of all that and demonstrate it, what those controls are and how they work.
Did you have, on your committee, when you met with the university, was there a public safety representative on that committee giving you feedback regarding this lighting?
No. Tom was there? I don't think there was. No.
My suggestion there would be to consider that
Please,
perspective.
yeah.
And I know this is a concept plan and it's very proposed and ODOT has a lot still work to do, but I'm a little concerned about the traffic signal. If I'm picturing this right, this area right now that we're thinking of a possible proposed traffic site is where there is currently a median between north and south.
Correct.
And I wasn't in Delaware when they built that, but my guess is there's a reason why they wanted a median there between north and south, and had something probably to do with traffic flow or concern of people going because of the speed there. So I'm just wondering, based on the speed that lane currently is, and people pulling in and out of traffic once this is populated, is there any discussion about the speed limit changing in that area? Because currently people probably go 15 to 20 miles higher than the speed limit on that stretch of land right now. I've been on it.
Speak from experience.
I've been on it yes.
I've gotten a speeding ticket.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think
Now I
you
find it
always
hard.
slow down. That probably depends if the highway patrolman's sitting at that usual spot right there.
That is possible, but especially
Everybody nodded their head, yeah.
especially when I worked late and I'm coming
Yeah.
through there around 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, we coming down.
Yes, going downhill. So just
I think the
wondering if
answer
this
from
discussion-
staff's perspective to your question, has there been any consideration for reduction of speed? I'd say the answer is no right now. That's part of our question in terms of the access point and doing a traffic study. I don't know if that's something that would be considered or not. Jan, I don't know, but it has not been to this point to my knowledge.
My guess, and it would be just a guess because ultimately we're in ODOT's jurisdiction here, but would be no. I don't think there'd be any desire to lower that speed limit in that area. And I think the main point is that the access would be through signalized locations. So, yeah, that signal is obviously going to be controlling speeds there. And, you know, I think as we discussed, the likelihood of that location that we're seeing now shifting to the north is pretty high, given some of the future access management plans. So I think there too, past that wall that you were discussing. So, but I think the signalization will make a big difference, and that'll all be borne out in the traffic study.
But it's still be south of Bunny Station, okay?
Yeah, I mean, Jen, is it inaccurate that whether it shifts a little bit or not, it's in that general, it's in the general frontage of this property?
Right.
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 The ODOT plan.
Right. Yeah, and I think there was some confusion with where that initial, the thoroughfare plan had the initial access point, which is I think where you're reflecting it, and where things are, how that's changed through the years with the Pollock Road realignment. So
I think that's, in general terms, that's our question, really, Tom, and you've heard this before from us, is that in terms of traffic study and ODOT making that determination, what would determination be?
Those commercial out parcels, I mean, just since we're talking conceptually, I would say from a comprehensive plan perspective, the type of properties, type of commercial to be looking for, well, it would still be in the same type of thing that we're starting to see on 23 as it builds up. You've seen the DACC with its extensions and stuff like that. You've got a medical campus, you've got an office, those type of things. From a comprehensive plan would be what you'd be looking for commercial out parcels. We would not be looking for auto stations and gas repairs or any of those type of things. A bit more of a campus feel. You know, if you go outside the city of Delaware, there you've got Columbus State as well on 23. So keeping it from that perspective, that's what I would think the comprehensive plan would be pushing for.
The general Cheshire comprehensive plan area. I think it's called the Cheshire sub-area. Okay.
Because I think it's really important what goes in these out parcels.
Yeah, because I mean, you go up and down 23 and there's tons of commercial out parcels and every one of them is empty. I mean, you get very few of them that actually develop fully and can stand there type of thing. And that's based on what, you know, the other townships are allowing type of thing. For staff, I would think if we're going to start seeing rezoning of any type with the plan mix, that we'd see the preliminary development at the same time. Is that what you're looking for, or at least what I would think I'd be looking for?
Yeah, I think we're looking for feedback with respect to that too, but that would be our normal.
That would be my preference.
Of course, events and code would require a plan mixed use overlay to come with a text and a preliminary plan. So and we've expressed that to the applicant.
Yeah, that's
Tom shook his head. So.
My preference as well. And I would, you know, again, it's conceptual. It would seem like the density on the apartments would be, you know, way past any type of density that for that particular area. It would seem like the density on the condominiums would be a better fit for that piece on the southern part, just from a density perspective, you know, within the plan itself. But again, until we see anything further, that would just be the general comments as how those would kind of fall together.
Thank you.
Tom, do you foresee that this plan calls for reducing golf course from 18 down to 9 holes? And if so, how is that going to continue keeping the values of these current homeowners in the properties that they're currently living in?
It's certainly possible that would be the plan. That would be what we try to accomplish. There are other ideas. There are other possibilities. Lots of golf courses are adjusting. In terms of rounds,
that's something other than a golf
executive courses.
Okay.
that are, one of the challenges golf has as a sport and as an industry is 4 to 5 hours. Especially, the younger people want to do other things, besides golf that long. That's clearly what's happening in that industry. So I think we're looking at everything, frankly, something to keep at 18, something that would be executive or 9. But the goal is to create the economy of scale and the economy from the Western development to keep that open space, to keep a golf course viable. Because as it is today, it's not. It's under a lot of pressure, just like many, 18-hole, semi-private or public courses.
I guess I would just have myself one final comment, just from conceptually, that any type of buffering between the development and the FESCO, I mean, there's current tree line up there, but anything you can do to continue or extend that type of thing over to the FESCO would certainly go a long way.
I just want to address that real brief. I mean, one of the things we're really trying to do is give them the window where they have kind of their signature buildings that are furthest to the west. That's why we do have the pond and kind of an open view shed, from the road. As you go further to the east, it kind of the nature of the buildings change a little bit, but the buffering point's very well taken.
I have more questions. I'm trying to. Do you have?
Yeah, the only thing I noticed is there doesn't appear to be any public park concept here or any. And I know that with changing times, that's part of the reason that you're going to these multifamily units and things like that. But I would suggest that you might revisit areas for smaller middle school age children, or you're going to kind of reduce your interest in those properties for families.
And that's very appreciated, the comment. There is kind of another threshold issue that Dave covered in the staff report, and that is, how do you, we have a lot of open space, but it's not necessarily open for families and things like that. So it's how do we jive that with the code requirement to have for open space? So, but that's well taken.
I have a question. I think maybe, Michelle, you can answer this. Is the roadway connection to the theological school, is that required?
I don't believe so. I think we haven't quite gotten, being at concept,
Okay.
we haven't gotten through all the roadway connections. So that's not anything that we've compelled them to do
Okay.
now.
Because I think my concern is, and I think it goes along with the traffic comments that you guys are hearing, it's like you've got one more connection for people to just cut through the theological school to get out onto 23.
Yeah.
Have you had discussions with the theological school and gotten their buy-in on having that connectivity?
We did speak with them the last time we were, in process. We need to, as we, talk to the city engineer and ODOT, we will be talking with them about the redesign. And
Excuse me,
I think
we would be declining that entry.
Sir,
I'm sorry.
thank you. We're not going to have any discussion like that. I need you to come to the podium when it's your turn to speak, okay? Thank you.
I was at least under the impression that the ODOT plan does eliminate one of their accesses. So I thought it did. So that was part of our thinking, but we would reach out and try to meet with all the parties.
Yeah, I think at this stage, everything is conceptual from what the proposed connection is there, but you're absolutely right that the thoroughfare plan calls for that one connection to be closed or at least to be downgraded. Yeah. So I think, that would make a logical, right, that they would make that tie-in and tie into that backage road. So.
have a couple questions about the impact to the existing and neighboring residents here. My first question is it Makatiwa? Makatiwa? So for residents who live on that street, what is existing currently in this cul-de-sac area is golf course?
Well, there's a gate
Okay.
in terms of,
But the use around it's golf.
yes, I mean, we're
I
not,
think is their question.
yes.
Today.
But I mean, we're not submitting anything that I don't believe is on that street, are we, Dave, in terms of what's in the city?
No, that's an area that's in,
That's in the township?
this in the line right there, you can kind of see it faintly on there, would be Delaware and Liberty Township. It's not in the city.
Okay. So if for some reason your plans didn't move forward with the city of Delaware, would you proceed with that phase of the development?
Well, I think anything we do starts with what's in the city. You know, there's probably no option to start in the township necessarily that we're seeing right now. I mean, it's the ground, because there's an annexation there, there's different zoning. We're going to start with what's in the city. I guess one of the points I'd make is, and I apologize, I thought you were going there, but I mean, that would be part of the traffic study to figure out, you know, how the connectivity, and, you know, there'd be a scope of the traffic study I think would cover the connectivity issue to that street.
My concern is I have to look at only what is in the city of Delaware. But because I know that this is what you're planning on doing outside of the city of Delaware, it's difficult for me to divorce those two things and ignore what I see happening on that street and what I see happening on Inverness Avenue to people who purchased homes that were on golf course lots that will be looking at multifamily or duplexes on the same street connecting to office, which is certainly different than living on a cul-de-sac that borders a golf course. And I'm not hearing anything from you that's, I guess, supporting the, keeping green open spaces to support housing values. How are we addressing the impact of the housing values with the loss of golf course frontage lots? How's that being mitigated?
You mean in terms of how housing value might be affected by the western development that we're showing?
Or the entire thing, because you can't, how can we divide up the pieces of it?
Well, I mean, we can only zone and propose to zone, we can only file an application today with what's in the city. And lots of arguments are made every day in planning commissions and councils across central Ohio about impact on housing value with little evidence. And so it's hard for me to, I mean, you know, the detail probably comes from, you know, zoning hearings, but it's hard to say that something you can't see will affect your value. And I also think, you know, the values that we'll be building here are competitive, because anything new costs more these days. There's a huge market for upscale condos, upscale rental. You know, that I mean, we're trying to build to the market, but housing values and expectations and what people want and the demographic movement we're seeing is really changing right now. And that is, there are communities of extremely high value housing where apartments exist next to mansions. I mean, we think they're compatible from a value standpoint, I guess is the short answer.
Let me make sure I understand.
Go right ahead.
I want to make sure I understand. I buy a house on a golf course. looking over the golf course, and I'm taking for granted when they bought those houses, that the realtor explained to them, you're looking over a golf course, isn't it beautiful? Lots a little bit more expensive, but still, it's well worth it, okay? And they decided, fine. Now, they get to look over a patio condominiums. And you're telling me that you don't see or don't think there would be any loss of value on those properties?
No, I don't. Not with what we're proposing in the city. I don't. Because I'm from the housing market. I'm from the housing industry. And I know that high-value housing exists together and is compatible from a value standpoint.
Well, I've got to talk to some realtors. I really haven't. I just don't see that looking over a golf course, okay, or looking over very nice patio homes are exactly the same. I mean, I just don't, value-wise. I mean, you know, everything is sold on value. You know, no matter what the house is. When you build these condominiums or you build those houses down there, whatever it is, you're going to explain to them what they're getting, okay? A beautiful piece of property across from, for instance, Perkins Observatory and everything, that adds value to it. If it was just a city dump there, then it would add less value, not that your properties are that. But I'm trying to, you know, you just hit me when you said you don't see any loss in value of the golf course to looking over another house.
Well, we also need to be, I'm sorry.
They also charge more for those lots. And what they did the lots in farther that were not looking over the golf course. So somebody got bamboozled there someplace along the line, I'm not sure.
I will, during this process, challenge you, sir, to be specific, because you're talking in very general terms. You're talking, you know, the chair started asking a question about Makatiwa, and I guess my first answer is I'm not sure you can see any of this from Makatiwa, but, you know, if we want to compare what specific impact a certain property will have on another, we're going to have to be specific and look at that situation, and that's not something we have tonight.
I personally hope that this committee, when this thing comes back, can get a chance to go out to some of these properties and get it overlooked, okay? I think that's a fair thing to do, either as individuals or whatever. I don't want to just be tracing through somebody's backyard, but I would like to get a feel of what I'm looking at when we go out there. You may be right. I've been wrong before. It'll be my first time. But I'd like to get a better look at that out there. I really would. When it does come back. There's no sense now because it's not back yet.
Any other commission member comments or feedback? It won't be your last chance. We can come back. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We will now hear from the public. I have a sheet that only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on it. Was there anyone that wanted to speak that didn't? You're signed in? Okay. Anyone that wasn't signed in that is interested in speaking?
It depends what's said.
Okay, understandable.
You'll leave that open for options to sign up for this. Because I agree, depends on what gets said.
Well,
You have no idea where this goes.
yeah, I would say just add your name to the list and then,
You can choose whether or not.
right. Just so that we are not bombarded with a bunch of people. Why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back once we get everything all worked out.
I'm not too
order, and we will move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. I have the names of people who would like to speak. Just wanted to set a couple of the ground rules that we're going to follow. Any questions that will be brought forward will be recorded, and that way we can go back at the end and answer them all. That gives us the opportunity to kind of group questions together so that we're not answering repeat questions. And it also gives our city staff members just a couple minutes to look up the information if they need to. There may be a question that we can't answer tonight, and if that's the case, then we will get back with the public whenever we can to answer questions that may not, and there may not be answers that are available at this stage of the planning process. We will keep it to 3 minutes a person so that we make sure that we have everyone has the right to speak and has a chance to speak. All of our email addresses also are available on the city's website. So if you go home and you realize that you wanted to say something that you didn't think of tonight, you guys can email us anytime. Our phone numbers are also made available to the public so that you can give us a call also. You don't need to just rely on this forum to give us your feedback, and we invite you to give us feedback in as many different ways as possible so that we know how you feel. So with that, I will call Diane Maselli.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Has the applicant had an opportunity to come back from the restroom or what?
Yeah, they're in the.
Do they want Vaughn or Tom, if you can hear me, I don't know if you want to take your seats or not. I just throw that opportunity before the public comment.
Okay. Okay, we also received a comment that if you do want to email us, that you also copy Mr. Eflin so that he's just made aware of any of the comments also. Okay, name and address for the record, please.
Diane Maselli, M-I-C-E-L-I, 428 Iron Horse Drive. My questions have kind of changed a little bit since we had this discussion, so bear with me. I guess my major concern with this whole thing is, yes, I understand golf courses are under stress. I am a golfer. I have golfed this course many times, and I understand the whole 23 hole issue. My fear is we go ahead with this plan, and then you take up the rest of the holes, and our whole community becomes nothing but apartments. And then our home properties go down even further than they already are. Nobody can sell right now, obviously, because of all this going on. I'm sure that's taken into account when realtors show our houses. I fortunately or unfortunately just moved in less than a year ago on a golf course view, which now is not going to be a golf course view. There's open space. I'm concerned about the open space. What is the open space? Who maintains the open space? How long is it going to be open space? And at any time, is that open space considered to be not open space anymore? I am concerned about the sewer, the tap fees, and the possibility of, yes, maybe not now, but when you decide to develop the rest of the golf course, is it then an issue? Possibly. I guess those are my major concerns.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Brenda Bradley.
Mine are identical to hers. I'll
Okay.
not reiterate.
Okay, why don't we just do this then? Everyone that agreed with the concerns, just so that we can see a consensus from the audience, that helps, regarding the open space. How many people are concerned about the open space? Okay. Okay.
Well, it says open space, just to
what
be
else
clear on that.
Okay. So then we'll move on to Jim Davies.
Jim Davies, 649 Mecativa Drive. And James answered one of my questions, or asked one of them, concerning Christmas lights. And are we now going to limit what Americans can do to celebrate the birth of our Savior? The other thing is, if he develops what he shows here that is in Delaware, that's going to affect a lot of holes, even though they might not be building on it now because they're not in the city of Delaware. And what happens to those holes? I do take a little bit of exception to what the First Lady says, that I'm not sure 23 really affects golfers as far as the traffic goes. But we are concerned about traffic flow into our areas. When we built in 2006, there was a question about whether or not it would remain a golf course. It was purchased. I get the feeling it was purchased not with the intent of making money on the golf course, but to develop it. We've heard that he has had offers by other companies to buy the course at a profit, but I think he feels he can make more money by developing it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Mitch Shively. Name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Mitch Shively. I live at 527 Covered Bridge Drive. I'll not digress too much, but Dave, you mentioned you can't figure out where the hole numbers are. None of us can anymore since they switched to the 9s, so you're not alone. I want to start by saying that I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the Homeowners Association, and the applicant has been very gracious in coming before us and sharing plans and being very transparent, and I appreciate that, as has the staff here in City of Delaware. That's been awesome. I have one issue that I just want to get on the record, and I don't think this will be a surprise to the applicant either, but the issue with the sewage treatment plant, I think, is a critical one. It's a private sewage treatment plant. The golf course and the sewage treatment plant have a symbiotic relationship with the way the effluent gets applied to the golf course. I won't go into any more detail than that. But I believe that the applicant is earnest, that it is their intent to work with us and make sure we emerge whole from that. If we can't work that out, we have a really serious financial concern about that, because the costs to our homeowners, to our residents, if we cannot maintain viability of the sewage treatment plant, would be quite substantial. So my ask of the Planning Commission and of the applicant, and he has my commitment that I'll work in good faith on this, is to hold us accountable to getting to an agreement. We've talked a lot about the Perkins agreement, and we have lots of questions about that. But I know that's a bit of a gating function for the Planning Committee and for the zoning and all that kind of stuff. I would ask that you give the sewage treatment plant concerns sort of equal sway as that around the lighting with Perkins, because the financial impact to our community, if we can't maintain viability of that plant, is really significant. So I would just ask that you hold us accountable, both parties accountable to that, and make that a bit of a gating function as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Could I see a show of hands for homeowners that are concerned about the sewer? Okay. Next up, we have Ryan Wilkins.
My name is Ryan Wilkins. I live at 820 Covered Bridge Drive in the community that's shown up there. I want to share with you quickly 6 reasons why I believe that development of this, specifically the frontage along 23, is a bad plan for the greater community of Delaware and the county of Delaware. The first to me is the concern that currently, as you're coming into the city of Delaware, you look at a beautiful green space. You're coming up 23, you're seeing all kinds of random retail that has already blighted what was a beautiful drive from Worthington up to Delaware. Now we have this one piece that is remaining, that's green space, that is a beautiful entry into our city. My personal opinion is that that is of greater value than anything else to this community. And there is a precedent in another community that's similar to ours in this region that has taken action to make sure that a space like this is maintained as green space, and that's in Granville, Ohio. I would ask us to consider looking at the precedent that they set as a community for actually taking a levy to purchase the development rights of their golf course to preclude any sort of development of that specific land to maintain it as a golf course in perpetuity. So that's something that I would ask you to consider and to understand. The second thing I think is we had a conversation earlier in regard to concerns about park space and the overall health and well-being of citizens in our community. I personally believe that Delaware Golf Club is a tremendous asset to the physical and mental health of our community. And I do believe strongly that taking that away for the use of what I would call random retail and questionable housing is not of equal value, in my opinion. So that's my second concern. My third concern is I truly believe that there is historical value to what we have here with Delaware Golf Club. This was designed originally by one of the foremost golf architects in the world, Donald Ross, in 1922. It has been a golf course ever since. And I personally believe that we will be very short-sighted as a community if we take action to turn what is a gem in our community into something that is simple retail. Obviously, what you've said about Perkins, I want to reiterate that as a citizen. I believe that that is of the utmost importance. More retail, number 5, is the last thing that our community needs. It's already been addressed a couple of times tonight, but I want to reiterate the fact that we have many, many parcels that are currently sitting empty. We have a lot of retail opportunity that is not being utilized. We have a lot of open space that is currently for sale that folks could buy and use for retail uses. Why would we take something that's an asset to the community, Delaware Golf Club, and turn it into something that people aren't currently using anyway?
That was your time. If you could just one more sentence and just try to wrap up what you were saying.
Sure thing. My final point is number 6, and that's where I am now. What will be an asset to our community now and 100 years from now? If we look at that property there, is it to put in random buildings that will probably be obsolete, or to maintain a truly beneficial asset to our community and green space? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it'll just take longer, okay? We'll pull up the next person, Michael Lambert, please.
Yes, hi, my name is Michael Lambert. I'm a resident at 2749 Royal Dornoch Circle. My wife and I moved into this development about 8 to 10 years ago. We bought a house on the golf course because we wanted the view of the golf course, and at the time we were given told that this was always going to remain a golf course. With that said, I've been through a couple of these meetings in the past on some of these other developments, and it's my understanding that this parcel that we're dealing with right now is in the city of Columbus. And as Tom said earlier, this is just the start. If this parcel is, in my opinion, the linchpin to this whole further concept and development of all the green space that you see there that's kind of grayed out for further development. Also, as an architect, I work with developers on a regular basis. I work with dark skies. I deal with lighting. I've done it for the past 25 years. In looking at these parcels that we have there, those parcels are not sized to take the kind of development and land use that you have spoken about, that you're seeing further up in the Ohio Health type buildings. Those parcels are 1.2 acres, 1.4 acres max maybe, or less. Those are the type of parcels that we see, the kind of low income development, the fast food places. That is my specialty. I do that, day in, day out. I see that. These are drive-through operations, banks, again, Tim Hortons, Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's, whichever. Those are the type of businesses that are going to be primarily interested in these parcels. Thirdly, the issue came up with the access point to 23, that's ODOT, as we know. I think part of the reason for that barrier there is because as you come into Delaware, you're coming down that hill. In the wintertime, that can become very slick, very icy. Cars lose control, trucks lose control. They slide. We're crossing the medium and hitting the oncoming traffic. If you put a light there, to try to put a light there, that's still going to be a continued problem for getting vehicles to stop in the wintertime. When this first development section goes, it is the stepping stone to develop these other sections. And even without that section development, I foresee that roadway that goes on up to the golf course and then on to Maquetawa will eventually become an open avenue for people to cut through between these two, between 23 and through Dornoch. And going quickly, because I know I'm probably running out of time here, with regard to the lighting, I think Mr. Halter said it great. There is not going to be any methodology that they can use to police lighting. Are you going to have somebody go every day and check and make sure I didn't change a bulb in my fixture, or so-and-so didn't install a spotlight on the back of their house? No. And even if they do, and I'll wrap this up here, even if they do, the process to do anything about it is going to become so cumbersome that eventually they're just going to throw their hands up and say, enough, I can't do it, and we're not going to go there. And this expensive equipment for the light monitoring, the last thing, who's going to maintain it? Who's going to police it? Once the equipment becomes outdated, who's going to replace it? No, it's not going to get replaced. It's just going to go by the wayside. And that's all I'm going to say since my time is up. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and hopefully this will remain as the other gentleman said, a asset to the city of Delaware and a beautiful green space and the viability of the full golf course and the value of our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jason Wisman.
My name is Jason Wisman, 2900 Royal Dornoch Circle in Delaware. We also recently moved into this awesome area about a year ago under the guise that this was a golf course. I was in contract with Dominion, as you all know, was bought out by Pulte. I couldn't get a house for 2 years for a while, so we bought in this area under the guise. To Mr. Halter's point, I looked, there was a premium of anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000 for a lot that is on a golf course. The statistics are there, just go look at who's developing right now. If they're not charging a premium to build a house on a golf course, I don't know, that's enough said. The next point is a little bit of concern about some of the information that was presented today with us. And I'd like to get some understanding. We had a beautiful presentation by the applicant in terms of this local confession of judgment. I'd like to ask the council to research any local examples of that ever successfully being enforced and to put some data around the time of start to closure of those points so we can get some reality. I don't know of any, and I'd love to at least understand that. I also moved out of an area that had dimly lit and multifamily areas, and I appreciate Ms. Keller's concern earlier by bringing that up, because what happens is crime doesn't happen in the dimly lit multi-family area, it happens in the surrounding areas. That's where the criminal and the crime will occur most frequently. I've experienced myself. I got to the point where it wasn't even viable to leave a vehicle outside because it will eventually get destroyed and vandalized. I'd like to maintain what we purchased within the last year and becoming a resident of this fine area. I also thought that I understood, and can I ask the applicant a question or clarification?
Not at this time.
Okay, I'd like you all to understand, it sounded like the light impact plan was actually against another plan. It was not against this concept plan. How do we understand that the light concept plan is still viable? I work with algorithms and understand data quite frequently. Any nuance can actually change the validity of any study. And so we need to make sure that we're taking the consideration, not under a past plan, something that was previously submitted, but that the studies are against the current plans being presented to the council. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who's that? Is it Jason Wisman? Okay, Jason Ruminski?
Jason Ruminski. I live at 675 McKetowah, and I just would like to bring up to the city council, I think the overall problem statement for the golf course is the viability, and they're not actually bringing enough business. And I guess when I see this plan, they're going to cut it down from an 18-hole to either a 13 or a 9-hole course. And I just don't understand how that's going to actually bring more money to the golf course. I think everybody can see once they sell the lots, it's going to infuse money into the golf course for a short time period. But overall, I plan to live at my residency for a long time. And I just see this as a stepping stone that once this money runs out, the golf course will still be in distress, and then they'll sell the rest of the golf course area and then try to create that into either more housing or other commercial properties. So that's what I would like to say overall to the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. I cannot read the next, the address is 443 Makatiwa.
Well, I would agree.
I need
with
your
what-
name and address for the record, please.
Lynn Savage, LYNSAVIDGE. And I live at 443 Makatiwa, so I live right before the cul-de-sac. So I'm extremely concerned. I not only paid a premium to live on a golf course, I paid a premium to live on a cul-de-sac, which according to every concept plan that's been submitted that I've seen, they intend to go away eventually. My concern is safety. I was very glad you raised that issue. This was built as a golf course, so there's no sidewalks, and it was built near Perkins, so there's no lighting. I can't tell you the number of times that I've almost hit people coming home at night after dark because they're out walking their dogs. The only place to walk the dog is on the street, and there's no lighting. And so unless they're wearing clothes with reflective strips, it's very easy to not see them. The children, we don't have backyards because the backyards are the golf course. So the children play in the front yards. So we've got kids that are constantly riding their bikes and all of their other toys. They're playing ball in the front yard. They're playing ball on the cul-de-sacs. And the speed limit is 25. We've had homeowners send out 2 letters since I've lived there asking people to slow down because it's very difficult to get people to slow down. So you've got these children that feel like the street is theirs, and part of it is the kids. I mean, I've come close to hitting kids too, and I'm very concerned that if you open that up, I don't want retail. I didn't buy on a golf course for retail. I didn't buy on a golf course to be near a job. I didn't buy on a golf course to be near condominiums or apartment buildings. You're adding hundreds of people into this community, putting a throughway through with no sidewalks and no lighting. So you not only have we've had the police called 3 times in the last year just on Makatiwa. Once for kids using drugs on the street down at the end, they came in and parked down there, and twice because people come out of the woods because they can, and this is going to be right up against that woods. So you've got all these new people coming in, and they can come up to those homes, and there's no lighting. We don't have lighting. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay Rundell. (3081) Columbus Pike.
I'm sorry.
Jay. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Jay Rundell. I'm president of Methodist Theological School on Columbus Pike. We have been watching this possible development for some time. Ron first came to see me in the summer of 2007. We've been open to trying to be a good neighbor. As you can see, we share probably the longest property line here. We know there's a chance development is coming in some way, and we will work with that if it does. We recognize the density issues, the lighting issues, probably contribute somewhat to the lighting issues. We've tried to correct that. We're also concerned about 23, maybe for slightly different reasons. We're concerned about access. We would not, it's no secret, we would not be opposed to a stoplight in some fashion for safety reasons. Very aware and have had conversations with the city around the Pollock Road access perhaps coming across our property in a way. We're certainly open to that conversation. What I want to make sure is clear is at no time in the last 8 or 9 years have we suggested that we're ready to support or give blessing to this. I think the plan, shortly after we met the last time, a plan was circulated that showed some golf holes pictured on our property. That didn't include us, didn't involve us, and this entrance into our property, we were not consulted on that. I just want to make sure there's no implication that we have been a part of this at this point. We're open to conversations. We'll listen not to any one developer or any one resident. We're interested in the whole community. So to the extent we can be helpful, be happy to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. Ed Brown.
Everything I had to say has already been discussed.
Okay, thank you very much. We thank you all for coming and giving that input, and we again welcome you to email or call with any further input. So this was a concept review, so there is no actual action that needs to be taken by this commission. Is there any further feedback that the commission members would like to give to the applicant before we move on to the next item?
Just real quick, has the applicant considered single-family homes and only single-family homes in this development?
I mean, I think we're looking at this, the concept plan. There's a lot of noise. And
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Sir, can you come to the...
Are very noisy on a golf course.
Mr. Sabatino.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to have you come up to the...
I'm sorry.
Can you start over?
Hi, Ron Sabatino,
Name and address, please, for the record.
7625 Breen Court, Dublin, Ohio. I think the question from George was, have we given considered single family here? We have, and we will continue to consider that as an option for part of the land. However, as you get closer to Route 23, the 23 noise is inappropriate for single family houses. It just is.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. With that, we will move on to item number 4, the planning director's report.
In the interest of the lateness of the evening, I don't have anything in particular to report this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Lance, do you want to give, but we do have full agendas coming up. Not in February, obviously, you know, this is not our normal date for a commission meeting. February looks fairly light, so we're hopeful we'll have another commission member appointed by council by then, and we can at least have the election of officers on the agenda to have a full commission. Other than that, do we have a case in yet for?
Yeah, we have one case in for February, conditional use for 147 East William Street, the former Shell station. They want to convert to a auto repair facility.
Yeah, we're conceptually, we're generally supportive of that approach. Obviously, it used to be a filling station and a service station. It wouldn't be a filling station now, but would reuse a postage stamp size parcel and a filling station building to service cars. And so be a local owner and one that's familiar to the community, has been doing this, I think up in Radnor, so it has a good reputation. So I think and the property and turn it back into productive use, very similar to what it was. I think coming in March, we have many cases potentially on the docket, from subdivisions to more concept plans, and we can fill you in on more detail on that later in the coming months or in February if you'd like to have that. But it's looking like it's going to be fairly full 2016 with pre-development cases and then following through with permits. So overall, that's a good thing for the growth and development of the city, as you know, but will be some difficult cases for the commission and council. I hope everyone had good holidays, and I appreciate your efforts tonight. I think the commission did a wonderful job. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Eklund? Okay, commission member comments. We'll start with Ms. Tuckerbuck.
I'll try to be really quick tonight because I know it's very late. It's a witching hour. The storage facility that we approved and was built east of ODOT, which is now open. I need to go back and look at the plans because I think I thought it was going to be offset more than it is. So I was surprised that it is close to the.
It's like 100 and some feet. It is 100 feet back. It just doesn't look like it.
It looks like it's you know.
And they definitely have the materials, the change in materials in the building, but I also think this is some of the translation between the plans and allowing landscaping to fully go. Not all the landscaping's in yet, and you got to let it mature a little bit as well. And I think you're going to get that buffering that we anticipate.
That's what I'm hoping, and I was just wondering. I know they have the temporary signage because they're now open, and I can't remember what's the length of time that they can leave that up.
Given the time of year they started and really finished that construction or substantially finished it. So the temporary signage will go away once they get their permanent signs in place, and they prefer those, obviously.
Yeah.
Spring should be spring would be my best guess now in answer to your question.
I mean, the turkey trot neon thing was up for like 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, so I'm not complaining. I pass it every day, and I notice that's up and
that's good
open now.
That's a good point.
Mr. Halter?
The only thing I'd like to see is out there, Warnock and Glen Ross, all that area. Can we get an overview of that whole area out there, showing what's been annexed, what's been approved? Because I'm getting a little more confused all the time when I look at the drawings, like the two we had today, exactly where that property taken intersects the other property and where it sits in the whole thing. I know it's a big hunk and it can't be done on a sheet this big.
For the south,
if we could just do it once in a while, even on the big screens.
Yeah, I think February presents an opportunity for the southeast area in general.
Basically, yeah, because
there's a lot in progress.
And then there's 10 of this, and then this street runs into that street. Eventually, it's going to run into this. And I'm trying to put the whole thing together, and it doesn't seem to serve the whole brain too well. I'd just like to see that whole layout one time, because I know a lot of it hasn't been developed off Pollock Road, but it ties into it eventually.
Yeah.
It just, I think for us, it'd be nice to see where we are and how much is left out there and how's it coming along.
I agree. And one of the things that actually Councilman Joe DeGenova and I have talked about, and Councilman Tom Hummers, that we are using some intern help, and we have been attempting to update our housing pipeline map, which shows a lot of that type of information and allows us to show you where certain sections are in development and what's left in that pipeline. Some of it's conceptual, some of it's preliminary, some of it's final, and in different stages. That's a lot of work, and with diminution of staff and other reasons, we just weren't able to keep that data up since about 2009. So we have to update a lot has happened since then, even coming out of recession. So we've been wanting to update that. where we have most of the data on future sections and approved or amended approved sections inputted now. The map needs to be updated, and then we need to go back through, and we are going back through the actual permits since that time and applying them by section. So we're getting close. May not have that for February, but it's getting close for that. But we could do something.
Fairfield South is where it seems to be right now. Once again, it's a hot spot like it was over the west at one time.
Absolutely is. Our majority of our new starts the last several years, new single-family housing starts have come in the southeast area.
I'd just like to have an overview of that whole place out there, you know, what's been approved, what's waiting, what's annexed, what's not been annexed,
Fair enough.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever it is, because I think it just, you people, you know where it's at, you looked at it, but so I don't know exactly where it's at. And I was wondering also, and I didn't bring it up, but on the first one we approved, the road changed names in the middle of the road.
It changed names at an intersection. So
Yeah, in the middle of an intersection. It was such and such this way,
and that's
and then change names that way. That's going to be.
I think Commissioner Prawl had that question, but when you see the full picture and you see the loop street that occurs, but you have another street coming in, you have to pick a place to change names.
We don't see that.
I know.
And I'm sure there's
we
a
work with
reason
the
for
safety
it.
forces to.
Yeah.
We've gotten better at that through the years that I've been here too, because we have some loop streets that don't actually loop all the way around. We've had some things, so
Just has the curve to be a loop.
we're trying to create nice home sites, but difficulty in road naming conventions. So
And the overall
yes, we
picture
can
would
give you.
clear that.
I think we can at least start the conversation and go from there. February would be a good time. March is going to be very, very busy, and in fact, I may poll you depending on how busy March and April and May are looking as to if you thought maybe we would go to a couple meetings in a couple of those months. I'm trying hard, and I'll work with the chair to not do that for obvious reasons, but respect everybody's time for one. But it sort of might be a choice between a really long meeting or two pretty long meetings.
When you say really long.
And I really would.
What time is it? Maybe a couple hours from now, but get it done in one meeting.
I've seen it 1 o'clock. And I'm very serious about when this plan, if this plan does come back, I would love to go out there and look at some of that.
I think we have to, because there's obviously a lot of concern with this development. I think people bring a lot of good points to the table. Obviously, property owners have rights, and we have to respect that on both sides of the case here. But I think to the credit of everyone here, I think we have to go out and we have to look at this site. Whether we do it as a group or as individuals, I think everybody sitting on this panel should see it.
You may not be able to do it as a group because of the sunshine law. I don't know.
We'd have to have a commission meeting to do that. That's not unprecedented in my experience, although
Whatever works out
very
best, I don't
rare,
care.
very unusual. You certainly can take your time now if you want to be really cold. But you could take your time now, and it's a different look now than obviously when everything's in blue and green and that sort of thing. We do have pictures and sort of a photo log that we can share as well.
It's not the same though.
Which is not necessarily the same, but it would get you a sense. They weren't taken in the winter, so you get that sense. But I'd encourage you, you have a concept plan, you've had them in front of you, certainly can go on public streets. Avoid going on private property unless somebody invites you on. That would be my advice.
See, because it's not zoned, except for agriculture, we have a lot more control.
True.
I think those are all issues we'd get into. Certainly as a rezoning, there's the bar.
Yes, we have at least a little bit of control.
Rezoning, the bar is set pretty high for anybody that's seeking a rezoning. But there is a bar. So that means it can be cleared as well or not. I mean, that's really the applicant's case to me.
I'm just, but anyways, I would like to, before that comes back as a preliminary.
Right.
I definitely want to go out there. I could not vote on it without at least going out there and vote.
Good point.
Agreed.
Mr. Prowl?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
In the interest of time.
Okay. Nice job this evening.
You as well.
And with that, we will have our next meeting on February 3rd. And we will adjourn at 9:29.
Thanks, Stacy, you're tired of me.